All right, I think I'm live. Let me check. Yep. What's up, everybody? It's Terminator Juice, and I'm gonna do a little juice opinions. Get this window moved a little bit differently here. What the hell? There we go. All right, so it's kind of a. I want to do this yesterday, but I was busy with other things. I bought an Apple TV, and I was getting that set up. Watched the Suicide Squad, and I just wanted to relax, and so I'm glad I did, because I want to review Super Mario, Bowser's Fury. I went back and played Odyssey today, and then went right back to Bowser's Fury. So I got a new perspective that I didn't have if I had done this yesterday. Also, I want to discuss Nintendo games, forever, but mostly on the Switch with the file size, where they still feel the need to have these teeny tiny file sizes, and I'm going to discuss why, for me, that's not a good thing, and why I wish they would not do that, and or give another option. Have the small file size option, and let others download additional data, for higher quality audio and video. But before I get into that, I want to get some more people in here. I also want to talk about the solid state drives, PS5 update, the beta. Watched since the podcast, I watched quite a few videos of people testing different M.2 drives, and they've all worked. If they meet the specifications, they've worked. I want to go over that, discuss the pricing, and why I have no issue with the pricing right now, because I'll go over that. But as we get a few more people in here, I will just talk about. I did watch the Suicide Squad, and I think it's a pretty good movie. For those that like Guardians of the Galaxy, I think you'll probably like this. I wasn't a huge fan of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Couldn't even make it through the second movie, to be honest. But it's a pretty funny movie. I don't know how it'll hold up upon a second, third viewing, but it was enjoyable, if not ridiculously silly at the end. So it's one of those things. It's not a bad movie. I didn't love it upon first viewing, but I would recommend watching it. It's definitely better than the original Suicide Squad. So I actually prefer the tone of the first Suicide Squad movies. It was just cobbled together, two different visions kind of smashed together into a movie that wasn't so cohesive. So the new movie's definitely an improvement. Just not quite my taste, but it's enjoyable. Anyway, we've got enough people in here, so I'm going to start with the discussion about the expandable storage, just in general, PC storage, PS5, and the Xbox Series consoles have their one option, and it's pretty pricey right now across the board, which it sucks, but I can't really be mad about it, because 8 years ago, I don't have the exact same. I don't think the only thing I have from the original build is my power supply. But back in 2013, I built a computer, and I was waiting because solid state drives have been out. I mean, I was aware of them for maybe 6 months, and my buddy was talking about them, and I was like, well, if I'm going to build one, I definitely want to do that. Well, you look, and I don't even know if there was a terabyte. I remember 500 gigabyte was almost $500. It's just under $1 a gig. So I had a 1 terabyte. No, I didn't. I was starting from scratch, basically, because I sold my old Dell or whatever. I went with a 1 terabyte spinning hard drive, a big, slow one, and that was like $80. And I had to go with a 256 gig solid state, and that's when already prices were starting to come down, and I had to go to the lowest. I bought a ADATA brand, which my buddy and I hadn't really heard about. I took a chance on it, and it worked out. Um, it was $180 for 256 gig, 2.5 inch drive, and that was the cheapest one. The more expensive brands, the Western Digitals and stuff, were 220, 230, some were 250, and I know the 500 gigs were, I want to say, between 450 and $500, and it's like, you know, at the time it was new, it was a very new technology, and if you wanted to have super fast boot speed, if you're going to build a new computer, in my opinion, in 2013, you're gonna put a solid state in it, and that was the main reason I wanted a new computer, because it was like 2.5, 3 minutes to boot up my old computer on an old drive. So 8 years ago I spent 180 plus tax. Well, it wasn't tax back then, for 256 gig, and with inflation, that's actually about $210 by today's standards. So, pretty equivalent to the 1 terabytes currently. So for me, it's like, if you need it, it sucks, when stuff's expensive. If you wait, it's going to get cheaper. That's that for a fact with computer components, with electronics. But the thing about waiting is, yeah, the what I was looking at, that the 8 256 gig might have been $100 like a year later, but then the 500 gig might have been 250. So either way, I was going to spend the same amount of money, but I might have got more storage, and that's just how it's always worked. SD cards, I remember when we got to 512 megabytes, and I want to say they were around $100. And then the terabyte, I don't have exact numbers. It was well over $100 for a terabyte, or not, a gigabyte. Sorry, a gigabyte SD card was over, I want to say, like 120, 150. The 512s were like, for a scan disk, ultra speed or whatever. Your 512, you're probably going to be $50-$60. Your 500 mega, or your 1 gigabyte, 120, plus, depending on the brand. And it's like, I remember how big a deal it was to have a 1 gig SD card, not the micro SD, the standard. And if somebody had a digital camera, like, oh my god, how many photos can you fit on there? And you spend 400 or 500 on a digital camera, and then you spend another 100 plus on a 1 gig SD card. And it's always been that way. USB 3.0 hard drives, when they first came out, they were way faster than the old externals, and I don't have any exact numbers there. I know I waited a long time till I could get a terabyte for $80, but they had been out. So I bought mine in probably, I want to say, 2015, a 1 terabyte, and it was $80. It was on Amazon. I looked up the price. It was $79.99. And you're like, well, that's a 1 terabyte, but that's USB 3.0. It's still a spinning disk. It's not that fast. And then we had switched to M.2 drives, and the Samsung for let's see, I don't know if I even looked at a terabyte, like a 500 gig when M.2 first came out. It was easily 200. I don't know the exact price, 180 to 220, somewhere around there. And then, so I was like, well, I'll wait. I finally waited till when did I get one? Last year or 2 years. And I ended up getting a 240 gig for like $50-$60 a Samsung. So I waited a long time. I wanted one earlier, quicker, but I waited until the price was right. Now, if somebody, when it first came out, my buddy, he put one in a year or two ahead of me, and I don't know what he paid, but that's just how the stuff works. The M.2s first came out, your 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes, $200-$300. Well, that was, now we're on Gen 4. The Gen 3s for a terabyte Samsung's $109. So I can't say exactly when that was more expensive. Probably a year and a half, 2 years ago. That was probably a $200+ SD or solid state drive. So now the Gen 4s come out. And like I said on the podcast a bit, I know a couple. Doc Trey, I think, made a video, and OJ was talking about it. $270 was the Seagate, their new Gen 4. It's the fastest one on the market. It's brand new, and it's ridiculously high priced. But that's what they want. They want to be the fastest. They want to have the quickest read and write speed. They put it out there. The early adopters will buy it. In a year from now, when that's the common speed and when that's the the more mass-produced product, those prices will be cut in half more than likely. It's like I just can't be upset about it or worry about it when I know that when it's $100 or less in a year and a half, whatever. Maybe I'll pick one up. It's not. It's just not that big a deal. The people that want to, like. There's guys, I guarantee you, there are people out there who are going to put that 4 terabyte Seagate in there for $1,000 in their PS5. And it's not because they need it. And it's not because, and they might not even have that money might not even be readily available. But there's people that are just, they got to have the newest thing right away. They don't want to wait. They want to say they got a 4 terabyte in their PS5, and the more storage, bigger the size, actually the quicker the write speed is. So it actually would technically be a little bit quicker installing and downloading stuff. Read speed's about the same. So there's somebody out there stupid enough. Somebody who's got the 2 terabyte for 500, 480, whatever it is. It's like people are going to do that stuff. I'm not going to. And it's like, do you blame these companies for their initial price being that high when there's going to be early adopters are going to buy it, and it's not the common process right now. When that's the common mass production level of SSD. I must not have the chat. Oh, all right, no one said anything yet. Thought maybe I had the wrong chat up for a second. Oh, I did. I agree it would be worse if the PS5 didn't use solid states and was barely an improvement. I mean, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Capable Ty. It's one thing to, yeah, you can say somebody's an idiot. If they go out and buy, like I said, that 4 terabyte, spend $1,000, that's just stupid. Because, I mean, just in TVs like TVs, DVD players, Blu-ray players, all this stuff, you wait a year and it's going to be at least cut in half. And I'm getting a little off topic, but when the first 1080p TV came out, Sony had a rear projection, I don't know if it was DLP or LCD, rear projection 1080p TV. I want to say it was 60-inch. It was $13,000. And guess what? It couldn't even accept a 1080p signal. So if you had bought that TV and spent $13,000 and then got a Blu-ray player that was 1080p capable like a year or two later, because these TVs came out just before Blu-ray. They were a little ahead of the gate. It would not accept a 1080p signal. It took the 1080i signal and it converted it to 1080p. So somebody paid $13,000. There's one in the showroom at this high-end appliance place in Grand Haven, Michigan. It's a very high-end, very rich area. And a year later, an actual 1080p model came out that replaced that one, and it was $5,500. So a year later, it went from $13,000, couldn't even accept 1080p, to the actual 1080p model, and it was like $5,500. So this stuff always comes down. It's always expensive in the beginning. The first DVD player was a Sony DVD player. I saw it at Circuit City. It was a full width, 17-inch component tall. It had a full width door that came out for a single disc. It was $999 and $99. It was $1,000. That was the first DVD player I ever seen. I paid $670 for my Toshiba dual disc one about a year later. The first Blu-ray players came out. They were $6.99, $5.99, $7.99. A couple years after that, I paid I think $170. It was the year the Wii came out. It was 2006. Paid $170, you know, or it was 2007. Sorry, might have even been 2008. You know, it's just, that's how the stuff works. You know, it's like, so anybody who's, you know, making a big deal about this, and they're not mentioning, especially Xbox guys or something. If an Xbox guy is saying this, you just got to look at their one option. The one option of the Xbox is $220. You have one option, 1 terabyte. That's all you have. If that goes down, good, but it's no guarantee because there's zero competition. One of the positives of just a M.2 drive, you know, for what goes in the PS5, goes in PCs, there's a lot of competition. Companies will be competing with each other. You're more than likely to find a Black Friday sale when there's competing products versus just a singular proprietary option. So, but yeah, getting back to Capable Ty said, to have the fast memory is worth it. I went from PS5 for about 2 months straight. Then I turned on my Switch, played Bowser's Fury, and I posted it on Twitter. When you get the Gigabell, you wait 20 seconds while it loads till you can fight Bowser, and it's like, it's probably more like 25 before you actually can move. And it's like, it was a bit of a buzzkill that took me out of the moment. I'm not used to that. I'm already used to no loading or super fast loading. So for me, it's worth it. Like, even if, like I said, a year from now I pay $100, $120 for a SSD to expand my storage, it's fucking worth it, man. The early results, this one guy showed that the Samsung, which is like $200 right now, it loaded just slightly faster than the internal memory. So there's no drop off in speed. So like, I don't know what a Gen 3 solid state drive, I don't know what the effects would be if you had that slower speed. That's what the Xbox One is, by the way. Well, it's a Gen 4, but it's 3600 megabytes per second instead of the 5500. So it's actually a cheaper, the component's like $130 to consumers. So they're charging $220 for the form factor and the, you know, the case or whatever. But anyway, so the fact that you can plug in this one, you know, and everyone that tested that I've seen with the appropriate 5500 megabytes per second or quicker was just like I said, just as fast as the internal memory. You put it in, it has to format, and it's just done. Like, after, I think it takes 30 seconds to format, it's done. It's ready to go. You can move games. 40 gigabyte game took like less than 2 minutes to move from the internal to the, you know, internal storage to this. It's still internal, but the M.2. So it's a really good solution. It sucked that it wasn't there at the beginning, and it sucks that right now the pricing is high, but the pricing of Gen 3 M.2s was high. Now it isn't. You know, it's like, that's just going to come down. So the other thing is the Heatsink. And I made a tweet, and one person tagged Player Essence. And I seen the title of his video, like, he's done with PS5 because having to put a Heatsink, putting a PC component into the PS5. It's such a simple process that it's literally easier. I mean, this is objectively easier than changing out your micro SD in your new Nintendo 3DS, for sure. The hardest part, honestly, is taking off the kickstand. It's like, because that screws the threads a little bit longer, or, you know, like, getting the case off. It's really simple. Taking the one screw, you have to use 2 screwdrivers. You have to be able to use a screwdriver, and to put the heatsink on, depending on the one you get, you have to be able to apply basically a sticker. If you can't apply a sticker, then you probably shouldn't be in gaming. You probably shouldn't be doing anything technology wise if you can't apply adhesive foam to to a piece of aluminum or metal. Like if that's really the deal breaker for you, like I said in the group chat, like this person, anybody who says they can't do that, there's no way they can put a screen protector on their phone, because that's way more complicated, way more challenging to get right. So everybody has a phone. Everybody puts cases on, puts what is the one advanced like tough case or whatever. Those are a little bit not super complicated, but it's not super easy either. Screen protectors are not the simplest process. Adding storage to your phones, a lot of times you have to. Some of them you have to pull the back plate off. Some you have to pop out a little door. It's like, yeah, it's not plug and play. It's not easy. It's not as easy as a micro SD card in the back of the Switch or the solid state drive on the Xbox. But if you can't find 5 minutes to do a relatively simple process, then really, can you put a disc into a drive? Because can you open the plastic of one of these of a game case? I gotta ask. Like, really, it's not that difficult. I've taken my side plate off. I took the cover off the storage solid state drive bay just to see what was under there, and had it back together. It was just, wasn't even, I didn't think twice about it. Just did it. So, but it's just, that's where we're at. Faster memory has a price, but it also has a huge benefit. And for me, the huge benefit, it outweighs whatever, even the tiny little negative that there is with the installation and the price. I don't need one right now. So can I be mad at a $200 M.2 when I'm not buying one till they're $100 or less, or if I even decide to buy one? I mean, I have I have 11 games on my PS5. I'm only playing 2 of them. I got a couple on there. I'm just like, man, I probably should delete these. Doom Eternal's the biggest one, the PS5 version, 68 gigs. And I was like, yeah, I played it. Played the 120 frames per second mode, played the ray tracing. Yeah, I mean, I already played 100% of this game. I'm not really ready to play it, but I still have it installed. I could remove it. The other thing I could do is I have an external I have that same ADATA solid state I said in the beginning that I paid $180 for in 2013. That's just an extra drive on my computer that I'm not using. I can buy a USB to SATA adapter for like 15, 20 bucks, whatever, and I can put all my PS4 games on that. Use up 250 gigs of, that 250 gigs with PS4 games. They still load and do everything just as fast as the internal memory. And then I have 250 gigs free. So if I really was worried about storage, because I do have quite a few PS4 games actually installed, I could free up 250 gigs real easy for, like I said, a $15, $20 purchase. So I mean, there's options. It's not just, you have to go out, you have to buy a $220 Seagate proprietary storage device. But yeah, you can hook externals up to the Xbox as well. So I mean, there's pluses and minuses to both approaches. I'm really not against either of them, as long as the price of the Xbox One goes down the same as when the PS5, M.2, the 5500 megabytes per second Gen 4s go down. I hope the Xbox One goes down, just for the sake of, that's what it should be. That's how it should work. So, all right, next we're going to get into Nintendo and their mindset of still making their games super tiny file size. Other than Breath of the Wild being like 13 gigs, I think it's like, after the DLC, I think it's like 15. I think Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is pretty decent. I think Luigi's Mansion 3 is like 6 gigs or something. But the reason I'm talking about this before I'm doing my review, because one of the first things I noticed with Bowser's Fury was the audio wasn't up to the standards I was hoping. It's not bad, but then I looked up the file size, and I was like, oh, it's only 2.9 gigs. 3D World by itself was 1.8 on Wii U, and you add 1080p. I don't know if there's any higher res textures or anything. So Bowser's Fury is about a gig, and it's a pretty large game environment. There's what, 5 or 6 different, maybe about 7 different main themes. So 2.9 gigs for me is just, and I know this isn't going to affect pretty much anybody else but me. It's just too small. There's no reason for it to be 2.9 gigs. The only reason they're still worried about making their games, compressing them down to such small sizes, is because their system only has 26 gigs of usable storage, and when you buy it new, like, so their hardware, I keep saying this over and over and over. I haven't done a Juice Opinions in a while, but I just feel like the Switch hardware is just holding back on so many different. What's up, Falcon Black? It's holding back game development on so many different levels, and that you can't tell me that 26 gig storage doesn't affect their decisions for deciding to still compress these games. I know on Wii U they did similar thing. The Blu-ray, which is no reason to, because the Blu-rays can hold like 25 gigs on a single layer, but the Wii U only had 32 gigs, so they kept making these games small. Well, I upgraded, and this is where it affects me the most, is the audio. So when you compress audio, it doesn't scale well to bigger audio systems. So just a quick brief story. When I got the PS5, I was so impressed with the audio capabilities, I upgraded my speakers in my living room. So I bought some Polk. They were phasing out this certain line. I forget what they're called now. Tower speakers. Replaced my little satellite speakers that was about this big to a full 30-something inch tower speaker. And I bought a new center channel. And I'm just like, I was blown away. Astro's Playroom just absolutely blew me away with its surround sound, with its audio, dynamic range, and all that. So when I switched to Bowser's Fury, 2 months of playing PS5, playing Returnal, playing Ghost of Tsushima, playing Astro's Playroom. Anytime somebody came over, I always show a sequence where the surround sounds really cool. So the reason the file size Dark Souls on Switch has ridiculous audio compression, I believe that. Witcher 3, I would think, also does. What was the other one? Doom 2016 has all kinds of audio clipping issues. So for those that don't know, when you compress audio, MP3s, you can get really good audio through an MP3 if it's on the highest, like 320 kilobytes per second or whatever. But what happens is, not only, and this, I don't know this for a fact, but I feel like not only are they compressing the audio to a lower format, but when you compress the file size of the audio, not run it through like compress it to an MP3 or whatever. When you compress the actual file size, it removes data that supposedly the computer algorithm looks at. This shouldn't affect anything. We're going to remove this here. We're going to remove this here. It shouldn't be audible. And it isn't if you're using headphones, if you're using the switches in portable mode in those speakers, if you're using your TV speakers, if you're using a low quality soundbar, you're not going to notice it for the most part, because it's just the fact of, those speakers are going to distort anyway. Those lower quality speakers aren't going to sound great turned up anyway. What happens when you have higher quality speakers, you have bigger speakers, the more you turn it up, you don't have the distortion from just turning it up. So in my theater room, I have a Yamaha as their flagship from 2018. It produces, I think, 2 channels. I want to say 150 watts continuous for 2 channels. And my Polk Tower speakers from 2005, they're really good. RTI 10s is the model number. They're a really well made speaker that I don't even ever want to replace. Anyway, The main thing about higher quality speakers is in high quality amplification is you turn it up and it doesn't distort. And that was, back 20 something years ago when I had just regular loudspeakers, like big box with like a 10-inch big woofer, lower quality components, like $200 for a pair of these big speakers. Yeah, they had a lot of bass. The defining feature for turning up the volume from myself back then, my dad, a lot of people I knew, was, oh, it's not loud until it's distorting. That's how you knew it was loud. So when I upgraded back in like 2002, I bought my first set of quality speakers. I was like, these aren't going loud. What the hell? These don't sound loud at all. And then my dad was sitting next to me, and he's like, he moved his mouth and said something. And I'm like, what? He didn't think it was loud because he didn't hear that distortion. But I couldn't barely hear him, even though there was zero distortion. So that's just a quick little audio lesson, speaker lesson. So what happens is with higher quality stuff, and I'm not talking thousands of dollars. The Polks, the tower speakers I have in my living room, I was $300 for the pair. The receiver I got was on sale for like $220. It was normally like I think it was $499, maybe $600, and it was a last year model. I got it for like $220. Amazing deal. So I'm not talking high end. I'm not talking $10,000 speakers, $20,000, $100,000 speakers, or anything like that. Just as soon as you get above TV speakers and like a low quality sound bar, that's when you turn something up, there's no distortion. So now it's the source that reveals the issues. And when you have compressed audio, getting back to this, very technical discussion. Sorry, I'm a big audiophile. When you turn up a low quality audio file, like a shrunk down, compressed, like MP3 or whatever I think the switch supposedly is just PCM, which is supposed to be uncompressed audio, but it's obviously compressed. So when you turn it up and your speakers aren't distorting, what you find out is that if it's a low quality, low bit rate and bit depth they call it, video or audio file, then you hear all the issues are all that data that's missing from the compression. Now you hear like clipping is called, where the audio will just kind of get really loud and kind of just cut out, and then it just won't be there. Like in Doom 2016, when you do like a glory kill, the audio just isn't there. It just stops. It can't handle it. So how I would best describe a basically bit rate for audio is just like streaming a Netflix show. If you're let's say your internet's going out, or you're sick, let's say your router's pretty far away, have you ever seen a Netflix show you're trying to watch in 4K or 10 HD, and it drops to the low quality? You guys know it. It looks all pixelated. You got all these weird, squares, and instead of seeing like a nice curve, you just see this blotches of, So when that happens to audio, it cuts out. It's just not there. The sound effect just isn't there. The other negative of compressing an audio track, I'm definitely surprised about that. But when you compress an audio track, you also shrink the dynamic range. I was gonna like draw something out on my desktop to describe. Let's see if I can get that working. It's gonna be really, really rudimentary. I'm gonna use paint.net. I'm going to switch my OBS in a second here. So let's go to, live reaction. Move this. All right, so I'm going to try something I've never seen anyone else attempt. I'm going to try to visualize when the audio dynamic range is compressed. So a dynamic range, let's say this, let's make a thin line here. we'll say like this is like mid-range, like 80 hertz or something. A lot of, vocals and stuff will be like above 80, 120 hertz, and then bass is below. So this will be your bass. So this is, I did not test this. So what happens is the dynamic range would be, also got to look at this as like volume. So from between here to here would be like the volume. So let's say, you got audio, get some loud bass, and then a loud gunshot explosion, and then just a lot of audio here going like this. Get some more bass, get some high moments, and all right, that's very rudimentary, but this is just trying to visualize. So the difference between, you can't see my mouse. I need to. Oh, you can. The difference. Let me try to get an icon or something on to make this bigger. There we go. So from this bass moment to this high, like you can hear this bass clearly. It's it's going low. You can hear this explosion up here. The distance between here and here is pretty vast. So you can have it at a good volume. And I should also talk about, what's quiet and what's loud. Like the movie The Quiet Place would be a good example. Let's forget that this is bass, and let's just talk about, let me erase this. Oops. I'll just use some white to cover it. Let's forget the hertz thing, the bass and stuff. Let's just go strictly loud and quiet moments. I think that's the best way. So this is a super quiet moment, loud moment, average, quiet. I should have drew this differently, but so the difference between quiet, like just some background noise, and an explosion, is like, that's a big climb right there, right? And you got a lot of travel in between, and then you have a lot of this in between kind of medium noises, people talking, stuff like that. Now what happens is, if you shrink the dynamic range, and I'm going to get around to why this matters for the file sizes of Nintendo games. So you shrink the dynamic range, and this is still the same scale. This is still the same full scale. Now the gap between the quiet and the loud is way smaller. So they're basically, almost the same, not the same, but the difference between a quiet moment and a loud moment is way closer together. So that means all the in between, all this stuff, they all are on about the same volume. It's almost like having a night mode on your, night listening mode, if anybody uses that. So now your loud, or your quiet stuff and your loud stuff is basically close together now. So everything in between, there's not it's almost like the movement of an analog stick, having the N64 range of movement versus having the Switch Joy-Con range of movement. There's not enough in between. So that what happens is a lot of the more subtle stuff gets lost in the mix. You don't have as much bass. You don't have. It's just all just shrunk together, and the difference between the loud and the quieter stuff is minimal. Whereas you go back to here, and now there's a nice amount of space for different levels of audio between the loud and the quiet, and it's just that's why I call it dynamic range, the range between the quietest and the loudest moments. And then the in between can shine better. Your surround sound effects can shine better when there's room for the audio between the highs and the lows. So I hope that makes sense. Let's see here, full screen cam. So the whole point of that is is when you shrink these games down and you play them on a decent size speaker system, you don't have that awesome bass. You don't have the the one sound effect standing out versus this sound effect versus the music. That's I'm gonna get into the Bowser's Fury thing, and the music. I actually had to turn up my center channel, and maybe it's for the best for my system overall because I could barely hear the music. And then I had to turn the system way up loud. And then when I had an actual sound effect of like being in this big revolving wheel, it was so loud and harsh sounding that it just drowned out everything else. It's just a bad listening experience, and it just sucks. And it's really down to the file size. Luigi's Mansion 3 impressed me. It was my best sound of the year because that game's not shrunk down as much. I know it's not apples to apples because it's a completely different game. I don't know exactly what the audio size of the audio is, but it's like a 6+ gig game, and it has better audio. Breath of the Wild is 13 gigs. It's just got cleaner audio. So that's the reason I'm against these file sizes being so small. And it also probably affects video quality. It probably affects the texture quality. If you look at Super Mario Odyssey, as good as that game looked, going back to it, I gotta say, didn't look as good as Bowser's Fury, but the ground textures look terrible up close when you go into photo mode. And there's no reason for that other than the texture quality. The size of the texture was reduced. There's no reason that those ground textures in the Sand Kingdom, when you go into photo mode, it's just like big chunky pixels. I mean, from a distance, the default camera looks good, but you don't. And it does it affect the game? No, but the grass texture on the first with the T-Rex, that grass texture looks like absolute garbage, and I can only imagine it's because they want these file sizes down small and they have to compress stuff. You can't have high quality textures and high quality audio in a 2 gig game that has a lot of content. It's like, and what's the purpose of it? More than likely, it's to fit in a 4 gig cart. I mean, I really believe that. Even Nintendo themselves are cheaping out on their own carts. That's how I feel. There's no reason 3D World plus Bowser's Fury should be 2.9 gigs. There's no reason for it other than your system has 32 gigs of memory with 26 available, and your game cards prices on game cartridges never went down. Last we heard, it probably even went up. So it's just, it doesn't affect 95% of people. Like I said, if you're using your TV speakers, the Switch in portable mode, headphones, unless you buy some really high quality headphones, like some $300 Astros or something, you might hear it there. An average soundbar probably not going to notice it. You might play the game and like, juice is crazy, this game sounds amazing. Well, I'm telling you, it doesn't. If you when you put it on a higher quality speaker system, like I said, it doesn't scale. Low quality or low file sizes for audio don't scale well. Is anybody old enough to remember, I think 20 years ago, 15 years ago, when you buy a DVD, you'd get a digital, you put a disc in, you get a digital copy, you put the disc in your computer, and you go to iTunes, or I don't even know what the other option was, and you would download the movie, and it was a mobile version. You watched it. It was intended to be watched on a tablet, a laptop, or a phone. I don't even know if phones back then. You couldn't stream it. You actually had to install it, and they were about 1 to 2 gig for an entire movie. And on iPod, Touch or whatever, they looked fine. On a 6-inch screen, they looked fine. Just for the hell of it, one time, I was like, you know what? I'm going to plug this into my, what did I have, 57, 60-inch TV. I'm going to try it on my 82-inch projector. Looked like absolute garbage. Like, it was so pixelated. It was so low quality, couldn't even watch it. But on a little 5-inch, 6-inch screen, it looked amazing. So that's kind of the same thing. And let's see, Switch only got 4 gigs of RAM to load all those assets, though they're relatively low resolution. That could be a bottleneck too. That's a good point. Let's see, another dumb issue with audio on Switch are their rear face speakers. The improved audio they're talking about for OLED model is just them fixing the direction of the speakers. That's true. Oh damn, saying I'm not getting enough the stream quality. Not retaining enough. How's it? Am I choppy? I'm not doing it. I don't know why this would be I haven't got this in a long time. Is it how's it for you guys? Is it speaking of low quality, it's saying it's not receiving enough video content. Yeah, CPU's only at 2% usage, so it's not saying there's drop frames though. Let me know, you guys. Am I still on? Am I still live? Because I can't. Either way, you were for a bit. It's still saying. It says poor stream status. God damn it. Intermittent lag still going. I don't know, maybe my computer's downloading an update. Shouldn't be. Dang it, I shouldn't have had that on screen. No, it's not. I'm gonna see if I can watch it. Shouldn't be. Dang it, I shouldn't have had that on screen. Yeah, it's choppy. What the hell? Tease talk. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to make it better without ending it and restarting it. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking about low bit rate and stuff, and now that's what's happening. Fuck. I'm gonna have to restart my router and stuff. So this will be part 1. I could do the review on a separate one.